We are back on the MITech TV, and we're just waiting for Mr. Matt to join us. He's just rolling in now. We have with us Matthew Kurpinski, and he's going to be talking about ITC. Let me get very specific here. Let me pull that up, my information. Matt is the Vice President of Information Technology and also Chief Information Officer for ITC. And he's going to talk about why cybersecurity is so important to ITC and what you can do to become more cyber smart. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. So anyway, we're going to be kicking things off with, as we always do. Why don't you tell us, we always assume with any of our guests that the audience may not be familiar with you. And so, I mean, we are, of course, and a lot of folks are, but let's talk about what ITC does and doesn't do. Obviously, they don't supply the power, but I'll let you finish the sentence.
Hey, thanks a lot, Mike. Thanks again for inviting me. You know, wherever you're sitting right now, there's a good chance, a pretty high probability that you're using electric power that's been generated somewhere else, and if you do, that power flows through a three-part system. It starts at the power plants where it's generated. It gets carried through high voltage transmission lines over long distances often, and finally through smaller local power lines called distribution lines. ITC is the nation's largest independent electric transmission provider. Our focus is just on the transmission portion of the system. Consider it to be a similarity, the corollary to being the highway system in transportation. When a package gets delivered to your house, it leaves a warehouse, gets on the highway. Eventually it gets off and gets to your house through the various streets. Well, that highway piece is the part that ITC is concerned with. In my role as the VP of IT and CIO, I'm responsible for all things information technology, as well as cybersecurity initiatives.
All right. So how does ITC work to be a cybersecurity leader in our industry and drive best practices and regulatory changes?
So for us, information sharing is key. We work in close coordination with both government and industry stakeholders to ensure that everyone has the latest information available. We also work cooperatively with federal, state, and local agencies to provide information on current cyber threats and to find ways to improve current cyber protection standards. We work closely with NERC, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, and other entities to enhance the cybersecurity of the bulk power system through meaningful feedback on the enforceable cybersecurity standards for our industry.
So how does ITC differentiate itself in its approach to defending the grid from cyber attack?
Mike, ITC uses a defense in depth approach for cybersecurity to approach it from multiple angles. We invest in a variety of cyber tools that cover all the network, application, as well as some physical security pieces. But one of the core things to that is our employees. They're core to ensuring comprehensive protection of our cyber assets. We constantly update our cybersecurity systems as well as training for our employees. We adhere to industry standards and compliance requirements, ensuring our cybersecurity practices meet and often exceed the necessary benchmarks. We actively monitor real-world threat intelligence from a variety of partners and agencies, enabling us to quickly adapt to emerging threats. We emphasize cybersecurity training and awareness programs to empower our staff in recognizing and reporting threats. Lastly, and let me say this again, we treat cybersecurity as everyone's job at ITC, not just the cyber team.
All right. And so one of the things the audience may not realize is October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And later in the show, we're going to be talking about the Michigan Cybersecurity Summit, which takes place on October 18th in Novi. I'm not sure what they call it these days. Is it the Expo Center, whatever name they call it these days? But let's talk about Security Awareness Month. Why do you think that's so important that people should be aware of that?
Well, I like to joke that we only worry about cybersecurity on days that end in Y. So when we only carve out 1 month, we chuckle a little bit about that. But it really is a good time as we enter the fall season to reiterate how important cybersecurity is, both on a work and on a personal level. It's an opportunity to remind people why it's important, but it's also to remind us of that our biggest protection from threats is the employee base. You know, we invest in a lot of hardware and tools and everything else, as I mentioned, but making sure our employees know how to safeguard against cyber attacks and report things that are suspicious is really key. Each year, we host a series of activities for our employees to increase the awareness and just to make sure that they have good cyber habits. We've held phishing competitions, quizzes, interactive panels, and even a few cyber game shows inside the building. This year, we've got a lot planned. I don't want to disclose it because any of the employees will be watching. I don't want to ruin the surprise for them, but we continue to keep raising awareness, not only to help them as employees of ITC, but to help them in their everyday online transactions as well.
Are you joining us now, Matt? I can't tell. Oh, I guess you can't hear me. Oh, can you hear me, Matt?
Nope.
Nope. All right, let me ask the question then. Matt's having some technical difficulties with our live show. So
Okay, no,
cyber-
I'm back now. So,
oh.
but you can go ahead. I'll get caught up.
Okay. So cybersecurity is not just a risk for companies like ITC. It's also something the everyday person should be aware of, right? So what are some of the most common areas of risk that people should be aware of?
You know, there's so many, Mike, it's really kind of hard, but with the latest iPhone updates coming out, keeping current to whatever the software is really important. So patching your devices, securing your devices with passwords and using the biometric features that it may have. Multi-factor authentication for any accounts that you log into, using your phone as getting a text message to confirm it's you is a fantastic way to do that. Using strong and different passwords. The old days of I got an easy password that's, easy to remember, so I'm going to use it everywhere is like the actual worst practice, right? So using a password safe of some fashion. And then, there's always these free Wi-Fis that you can connect to everywhere you go. And, nothing in the world is free. And usually things that are free aren't always that good for you. So we always say, don't use public Wi-Fi if you can avoid it. One of the things we teach our employees, both at work and on the personal level, is be skeptical. When someone wants to offer you something for nothing, it's probably not really a legitimate offer, And one thing we've been sort of reiterating with our employees, for their personal use is, I don't know how many of the listeners today or the viewers today are still using an old AOL email account or something that they've had for the last 30 years, but it might be a good time to get a new and/or second email account. So we actually suggest that you have a separate email just for your financial related websites and that type of thing, and you don't give that one out to anyone, especially someone who texts you looking for it. So we do a lot of things to try and raise awareness. I think the big key is be skeptical, trust no one.